Finally got Marvel Ironheart episode 4 to 6 finale. Mephisto finally here, bruh. About time.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my full Marvel Ironheart episodes 4, 5, and 6 video, the finale. This is it. There's not supposed to be a season 2, but there is a
I highly
post-credit
doubt
scene,
that.
so I'll explain what that's supposed to set up, because their plans have changed for what it was originally meant to set up. For some weird reason, I don't have any
even know if
actual
I saw
Mephisto
it.
TV shirt, so we'll have to
Pretty
go
sure
with
I
Hellfire
did.
Club from Stranger Things. That's about as close as we can get to Hell and Mephisto in the MCU. Probably the biggest thing, though, is they finally did the thing. They finally did Mephisto. We were all wondering,
I'm
there were a lot of
surprised they
rumors
did.
about them doing Mephisto on the series. Sacha Baron Cohen filming some scenes a couple of years ago,
Now
because
they
they
could
did
do the
film the
Wanda
series a
movie.
couple of years ago, so it's been sitting on a shelf with them polishing it for the last couple of years. There were a couple of moments during the last few episodes where they tried to tease, oh, maybe it's Dormammu, but then Zelma Stanton became unsure, like, I'm 50% sure, 47% sure, all to foreshadow the fact that it was someone else, with Sacha Baron Cohen's Mephisto making fun of Dormammu, calling him small potatoes. Part of the idea is that
He'll get
Mephisto
cooked
is
by
basically
him.
meant to be Marvel's version of the devil. He actually rules over a dimension that's referred to as Hell in the MCU. It's a little bit different from the actual biblical
Bro, they
version of
were
hell
always
and the
they were
actual
in it?
biblical devil, but it's like the closest thing you get to in the Marvel Universe.
I didn't
His
even
big
know
thing
that.
is trafficking in people's souls. That is his currency. So that's what happens to Riri Williams at the end of the series. She's able to sell her soul to Mephisto. So we'll talk about the ramifications of that and
I
why
already sold her
Mephisto
soul,
wants
bruh.
everyone's souls in the
Too
first
easy.
place. There are a couple of jokes that he makes about what he actually gets out of this. He just keeps telling them, oh, nothing that you would miss. There's a reason why he wants all those souls. He definitely wants to take over the main MCU dimension in the 616 universe. It's
You
basically
gotta
the
get a
same
big
thing
movie,
from
I
the
think.
first Doctor Strange movie,
Eventually.
Dormammu trying to take over the regular Earth dimension. But there is a lot to unpack. So the title of episode 4 is Bad Magic, a reference to Riri Williams powering her Ironheart Mark III suit with magic using Zelma Stanton from the comics, and learning about the source of all this bad magic, quote unquote, which her mother, played by Cree Summer, thinks comes from the dark dimension in Dormammu, and is a big reference to the events of the first Doctor Strange movie in Caecilius being sucked into the dark dimension permanently. But then obviously the big reveal that it's really
Yeah, deep
Mephisto in a completely
fried.
different dark dimension. Then digging deeper into the nature and the origin of the Hood's cloak, where it gets its power from, which obviously they confirm to be Mephisto. It's Mephisto's cloak in the context of the MCU. It's a little bit more complicated in the comics, but it's the same basic idea. Ghost Rider, Spider-Man
You just
have
let
dealt
him
with
borrow it
Mephisto,
then?
them selling
Or
their
what?
souls or selling pieces of things that Mephisto wants. Like in the case of Spider-Man, it was a little more complicated. He sold his marriage to Mary Jane in order to bring Aunt
Bruh.
May back to life in the
They should
comics
do that
during the whole Brand
storyline
New
with one
Day
of the
comic book
Spider-Man.
arc. They adapted a little bit of
With
that for
Andrew,
Spider-Man No
low-key.
Way Home with his spells, Doctor Strange's spells, erasing people's memories, and now we have the title they're using from that Spider-Man Brand New Day for Spider-Man 4 in the MCU. That doesn't mean that Mephisto is going to be a really big Spider-Man Brand New Day character now or anything like that. This is completely different what's happening on Ironheart. For the most part, the movie Spider-Man Brand New Day is just borrowing the title, not the complete plot of that comic book arc. But the last big time that Mephisto was a real big character in a Marvel production was during the Nicolas Cage Ghost Rider movie. When he became the next writer, the contract that he signed was selling his soul to Mephisto. And Riri Williams, to get the real Natalie back and to get the resources that she wants to actually build everything that she wants to build. There's a little bit of a teaser that Mephisto might want her to actually build something, but in reality, the only thing he actually needs to take control of the MCU dimension is just everyone's souls. So if it wasn't clear, he doesn't just make bargains with people on Earth one at a time. He does this with everybody all over the universe.
What does he get out of
constantly.
it, though?
The real big twist being, though, not everybody agrees to his bargains. Like he says, Forbes' richest list of people, I only control the top 100. There are only 14 kings, only 3 popes, and 1 beetle, Ringo. So it's not like every single beetle sold their soul to Mephisto. They start the cold open by showing you the Hood's origin story, sort of teasing the idea of this robbery that's gone wrong. It winds up being his father, setting the stage for the reason why he picked all these different heists in particular. There are a lot of questions about why he wanted
Bro,
these
he just
particular
wanted a
companies, why
handout.
he was doing all this.
That's all it
Turns out
was.
he wanted to get back at his father. Just another bad Marvel dad. Add him to the list. Thanos would be proud. There's so many bad Marvel dads out there. He probably bonded with Ezekiel Stane a little bit too. Like probably a little bit soft
They
spot for
got
him. Like,
daddy
oh, Obadiah
issues
Stane,
in the
terrible
MCU,
guy,
bro.
probably a terrible father, just like my terrible father. In the flashback, he's trying to rob his father. It goes wrong. John winds up saving him after he gets caught by the security guard. And they don't really follow up on this until episode 5, where they make the rest of the reveal. Like you see the other side of this. Then the idea is that because Mephisto has just shown him the vision of Riri killing John, he's biding his time, waiting to kill her, or get the team to try and kill her. Their creative use of the title in this episode is a picture next to John's on the wall of their pizza shop lair. We actually find out that Desperito's Pizza, it's a real-life pizza joint in the context of Chicago, but it's
Desperitos.
the place where Mephisto took the Hood to sell his soul. He just eventually set up shop in this place. This also kind of confirms my theory that the name Desperito was a reference to Despero, another one of Marvel's fear lords like Mephisto. Mephisto's also one of the Hell Lords too, like there are hell dimensions, like multiple hell dimensions. Marvel gets a little technical with the way they explain different planes of existence and like the whole idea of hell and heaven inside the MCU. For the most part, all the different religions are also real, like all these deities are out there all real, live in different dimensions, different planes of existence. They kind of get into this whole concept during the Moon Knight series and then during Thor Love and Thunder with Omnipotent City with a bunch of gods from across the
They need to
MCU.
stop playing and do that
Riri then
season 2, bro.
investigates the Hood's cloak and learns that it has an internal
I
combustion-like
know they don't
system
want to,
that
but
powers whoever wears it. But we
everybody
eventually
wants
learn
it.
more about it from Zelma Stanton. Like this is all meant to set up the twist where she goes to Zelma Stanton to get more information about how it's connected to dark magic. And they think Dormammu at the time, but really winds up being Mephisto. Basically, the idea is that Mephisto passes a portion of his power, like grants a portion of his power to the actual cloak, and the cloak itself possesses whoever wears it, turning them into a demon that will eventually totally be controlled by Mephisto. Like, he'll eventually completely take control of them. If it wasn't clear, it's meant to be a parallel for the way that the Hood tries to control Zeke Stane later with his bionics in the last episode. At a certain point, Mephisto would begin doing the same thing to the Hood. But if it wasn't clear why Mephisto is doing things the slow way, like the long way around like this, if he's so powerful, he basically tells the Hood that he can control the entire city. Want to see me do it to the entire city? Because of the way
Why
magic
doesn't
works,
he though?
Mephisto is also bound
He's
by the
scared.
terms of the contracts that he makes with these people, just like the people are also bound by the contracts. This will wind up being more important when Riri Williams learns the truth of the
I don't know how
cost
she's
of
gonna
the
get out of
magic
that.
and finds a way to break her contract with Mephisto or get rid of her contract with him. Because by the end of the series, she's basically in the middle of turning into another demon, just like the Hood was turning into a demon.
She sold her
But
soul,
this is
bro.
also the reason why the Hood itself can't be destroyed by normal means, normal weapons, or devices inside the MCU dimension. They imply that the cloak is organic and is actually just made from Mephisto, like it's part of Mephisto's body that the people are wearing, like the Hood is wearing Mephisto essentially. She can't destroy it because she can't destroy Mephisto, that's how powerful he is. Even somebody like Doctor Strange couldn't destroy Mephisto. You would need something like the Infinity Gauntlet to repel him back to his dimension. It would still be like a really hard proposition to destroy him with the Infinity Gauntlet, but you would actually have a pretty good chance of doing it. There's always a big question about how powerful different characters are in the MCU. A lot of it just depends on where they get their power from and where they are at any given moment. Like Mephisto is more powerful in his home dimension, the Hell dimension, than he is inside the MCU. She mentions looking for
Was
Wakandan
he gonna
energy
try to
sources, that's
bring that or
vibranium-based power,
merge
Kree,
them?
Stark tech for Iron Man, Pym tech. Part of the reason why she can't detect any energy coming from the cloak is because it is extra-dimensional energy. They kind of got into this whole idea during the first Doctor Strange movie where, yes, there is a scientific explanation for how they power their spells. They basically get magic from other dimensions. It's a little bit different in the comics. Usually different characters make bargains with higher cosmic entities or gods that grant them portions of their power, and that's how they power their spells. Really good example of this is in the comics,
The
Doctor
Book of
Strange
Ashanti.
gets a lot of his magical energy from the Vishanti. So later in the episodes, when the Hood tells Mephisto, I need more, like he's asking for more power, Mephisto tells him, if you're able to kill Riri Williams, I will give you more. That's basically the idea, like he'll grant him more power from himself. One of the reasons, though, why she sees part of the Hood disappearing inside the jar that she puts it in is because Parker is still practicing his breathing techniques, so he's disappearing while he's wearing the Hood. Anytime this
That's
piece
crazy. It
disappears,
stays
it
connected.
means that he's using the Hood. Just because it is so powerful, it's still connected to the other larger piece of the Hood. She and the Natalie AI get into the ramifications of her actions killing John, whether or not she did it on purpose or it was an accident. There were a lot of questions about this because the first 3 episodes I didn't
I
feel like were quite
mean,
as strong as the last
who
3
was trying to
episodes.
kill her?
There are a lot
So
of big plot twists in the first
why
3 that
save
they
him?
basically just waited till the second 3 to pay off. And this is one of like the real big ones. Like, was she conscious in killing John? Like, did she do it on purpose? Was it the Natalie AI that
It
killed
was
John?
that adrenaline
So I was
rush,
a
bro.
much bigger fan of the back 3 episodes than the first
Just
3.
trying to get up out
One
of
of the other
there.
plot threads that they addressed that people were asking about in the first 3 was the Wakandans and Shuri. Why doesn't she just go to the Wakandans for help? She references her role during Black Panther Wakanda Forever, the war with Namor and his people. Technically, yes, she is at fault because she created the vibranium detector used by the humans that alerted Namor, that sent him on the Wakandans, sort of setting everything off. She makes it sound like she thinks Shuri would be pissed and doesn't want to hear from her. That's probably incorrect. Like, Shuri would probably be
They're
willing to
probably
help her.
best friends.
But because you've probably seen a couple TV shows before, you know the real reason why she doesn't go to the Wakandans for help is because of plot. They want her to feel like she's forced to use magic to fight magic, to go to Zelma Stanton for answers and for help, and to back her into a corner in the finale to a point where she feels like she needs to make the deal selling her soul to Mephisto. If Shuri were to have come in earlier in the plot and help her with all the resources that she needed, she would have never done any of that stuff. She goes to Ezekiel Stain's house to find that the cops have arrested him
She gonna
because of
get
his
on that
tech that
ass
she
about
left at the
that.
scene of the heist, the scene of the crime. There are a lot of people who are asking about this after episode 3. Like, the police are going to find that. They're probably going to arrest him. So
Yep.
they're able to trace it back to him, throw him in prison, sort of setting them at odds with each other. But the way they play his character the rest of the series, even though he does want to knock her around a bunch, they do make it seem like he does kind of want to help her. Like,
He
the
was
way
still
they
a good
end things
guy.
is frenemies, not as full-on outright enemies. Like, he tells her, we have unfinished business. Not, I'm gonna chop your head off the first chance I get. Just that we have unfinished business.
No, you and I aren't done.
They could always wind up bringing him back during their Young Avengers or their Champions project. Don't worry, we will talk about that later
I
in the
wonder if
video.
that's gonna be in
There are a couple bits of
Doomsday
information here too on the side, couple
or
funny
Secret
things. We learned that
Wars.
he had legally changed his name to Joe McGillicuddy. It wasn't just an alias. Terrible name, like he's terrible at naming stuff, but maybe he did that on purpose because he wanted such a mundane sounding name that nobody would think about him twice. When they arrested him, they found a bunch of black market bionic tech at his main house, not the tech at his bunker. So that's a really critical point. All the tech that he has at his bunker, all of his weapons, all that stuff is still around at the end of the series. And a couple ironic things here too in the background. If you listen to the news broadcast, the people on the news still believe the false story that S.H.I.E.L.D. created, like Coulson created with Nick Fury, to hide the truth about the events of the first Iron Man movie. So they all still think, like the world still thinks, that Obadiah Stane was an upstanding member of
Yeah, that was
society
kind of
and
crazy.
died in a really tragic plane accident. They also say rest in peace, Tony Stark, because he is still dead in the present day of the MCU. There's a lot of foreshadowing in the background here too, like a couple different moments in all these episodes building up to her selling her soul to bring Natalie back to life. So you could also look at this as a chance that somebody else could try this with Tony Stark, like Pepper Potts could sell her soul to Mephisto to try and bring him back to life.
I don't think
But
they should
Marvel's
though.
probably not going to do that.
Yeah.
They've already locked Robert Downey Jr. down, selling his soul to another type of contract, but for Doctor Doom in Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars. Turns out his soul is worth about $80 million.
That's wild.
Make sure if you're going to sell your soul to
movies,
Disney
bro.
or a large corporation,
crazy.
you get paid a lot of money, more than you'll ever be able to spend.
He deserve it though.
And one of the other ironic statements that the news makes is that the apple fell very far from the tree when this arrest and betrayal causes Zeke to turn heel, basically, at least for a little while, and become just like his father. Basically, a parallel to the whole Iron Man versus Ironmonger scene from Iron Man 1. There's a lot of lines of dialogue that he has too, like he makes literal references to that when he goes after her during episode 5. While this is going on, the Hood's crew's learning all about Ezekiel Stain. They mention there's a conspiracy theory subreddit based on people who think they've spotted Obadiah Stane running around in present day. When they say he's only allegedly dead and there's no body, that's probably because of the deleted scene, the alternate ending from the first Iron Man movie. Kevin Feige actually had them change the original ending. Jeff Bridges actually said the original ending to the movie was them opening up the Ironmonger suit and there being no body, and it was going to imply that Obadiah Stane had escaped and he would return as some future villain in a future Iron Man movie or future Avengers movie. At some
He
point when they were
gone
filming
now.
the movie, they changed their plans, and in the actual film, like you rewatch the movie, they do find his body and he's dead when they open it, and then in the context of the MCU, S.H.I.E.L.D. just lied and said there was no body, so nobody would come looking for it. They reveal the Hood's been training to hold his breath for longer. That's just the way that his
That was
hood
pretty
works. The longer
wild
he
too.
holds his breath, the longer he can stay invisible. Currently he's up to about 11 minutes. That's actually a pretty long amount of time. He sees the news about Ezekiel Stain and then puts two and two together and sets him on the path to recruit Ezekiel Stain to become his new tech guy and help him kill Riri Williams. Back at their home, she actually rigs up some cameras as a defense
She was
system and
scared
gives
as
her
hell.
mother the
I
Iron
mean, I
Man
don't blame
style
her.
watch, like we saw from Captain America Civil War. It was a little bit with his version of the watch, like it was an actual full-on repulsor. But it's meant to be the same basic idea, baking tech into everyday wear.
Don't take it off.
She meets up with Xavier. They tease a little bit
Is that
more of their
protection?
romance. He makes more Star Trek references to Spock. She mentions Uhura. I think this is to set up the payoff of the Star Trek quote from Star Trek II in Spock's death, like the quote about Spock when he returns to her in Episode 5. Whole lot of Star Trek references during the series. He actually makes an Ironheart reference when he talks about her heart underneath the armor. They make the Vulcan
The
salute
heart
to each other as they
made
say
of
goodbye,
iron.
live long and prosper. They reveal she's been sleeping inside her Ironheart suit as a defensive
that
measure,
spooked
but then her
that she had
mother
to do
sets
that?
off her watch defense system using the X-Files TV show because of the gunshots. This is actually meant to set up the twist in the White Castle later, where the gunshots set off that version of the watch defense system. Her mother makes a reference to the Kool-Aid Man busting through the door. When she mentions finding another kind of genius, that's also foreshadowing for Zelma Stanton in her magic. When they go to her shop, the Stan's Donuts shop next to hers is a reference to Stan Lee. Miss Stanton is Cree Summers'
R.I.P.
character, Zelma's mother,
to the
who
GOAT,
also
Stan
practiced
Lee.
magic at one point and studied at Camartage. They explained that she was a student of the Ancient One until she became pregnant, then came back to Chicago to raise Zelma Stanton. So Zelma Stanton,
She
too,
got a
has
little bit
not
of
studied
magic
at Camartage,
still.
but for a while, when they introduced the character, she is from the comics. She appeared during the Strange Academy comics as one of Doctor Strange's understudies. This is where we get into some of Marvel's original canceled plans and the stuff that they were trying to set up with this series, like the post-credit scene. So originally the idea was they were going to introduce the Zelma Stanton character on this series, then she would go on to the Strange Academy TV series they were going to do. Wong was basically going to be their Dumbledore on that series, and it was going to be Disney Marvel's version of a Hogwarts series, a Harry Potter type of series. Magical school, but
They
just
got
set
all
at
these
Camartage
students
with
now,
them getting
though.
into all kinds of hijinks and adventures. When Marvel changed all of its plans for how Marvel Phase 6 and Marvel Phase 7 were going to go down, they basically canceled that Strange Academy TV show. So now the Zelma Stanton post-credit scene seems like it might not get paid off till a Young Avengers or a Champions type of project, or maybe Midnight Suns or something magic related at some point in the future. But currently, it's one of those post-credit scenes that might never get paid off. Everybody's still waiting for Kit Harington's Black Knight
Maybe, maybe
character to
not.
come back. Like, just join the grave of dead Marvel post-credit scenes that point to nowhere now. There are a couple Willy Wonka references. Her mother makes one, then Zelma Stanton makes an Oompa Loompa reference. My assumption is that her t-shirt, "You're Too Good for Him," is also meant to be both a reference to her selling her soul to Mephisto at the end of the series, and Zelma Stanton falling for the Hood when he tries to get her to team up for more magical power. Like, he tries to trick her into forming another team at the end of the series in that
He's trying
post-credit
to get
scene.
Rizzy.
She magics them into her lair, which is the western cortex of Neverish, which is also from the Strange Academy comics. It's basically another pocket dimension. When she's examining the Hood's cloak, she mentions witchcraft, which is the kind of magic Agatha Harkness uses, all the witches used on the Agatha
There's too
series.
many people with magic
Also,
now,
a little bit
though.
of a nod to Scarlet Witch because there's so many Doctor Strange
Everybody
adjacent
knows
references
magic
here.
now.
One of the other funny details here too is they reveal that Zelma Stanton learned some of her magic from watching people
That's
on
funny, bro.
TikTok. So I think the idea is that inside the MCU, there are people that actually post like crazy videos that people think are like AI generated, but in some cases, it's people just practicing magic and filming it for clout, like for followers. Like I said at this point, Zelma Stanton's mother incorrectly assumes that the hood is tied to Dormammu, which she's still very much afraid of. Like, no, we need to stay as far away from him as possible. A lot of this is meant to be a misdirect because they didn't want to give Mephisto away this early in the run. They wanted to save it for like a real big moment at the
I
end
like
of the
how
series.
they did it though.
Get that scene of the Hood offering to break Ezekiel Stane out of prison, bonding over their shared hatred of Riri Williams. She then goes to Ezekiel Stane's underground bunker, trying to and failing to destroy the Hood, which just sets her back on the
There
course
was
to
no way.
return to Zelma Stanton for help, like magic with magic. One more random funny moment here too, like she door dashes to the secret lair, which itself is kind of funny, but the delivery driver also gets curious about what her deal is. Like he starts peeking around like, what's going on here? There's a
Nosy
brief
ass,
moment where
bro.
the Natalie AI grabs Xavier in the armor suit so that he can give Riri a pep talk. She tells him the truth about everything. He learns the truth about the Natalie AI, is
Natalie fucked
disgusted
it up,
by
bro.
like, how dare you pervert her memory this way. His whole talk with her about letting go, like honoring Natalie's memory but letting go of her, is meant to foreshadow how she's unable to let Natalie go, and that's why she makes the bargain with Mephisto to sell her soul in the first place. Xavier literally tells her here it's not going to end well for you, and it does not end well for Riri
They're already
Williams.
getting scarred up.
Zeke Stane then upgrades himself with all of his bionic tech, turning himself into the comic book Technovore, his comic book identity, and they wind up hacking it so that the Hood gains control over his body temporarily. Like I said, that's also meant to be a parallel for the way that Mephisto is able to control the Hood. He's slowly possessing him with the Hood itself. They mentioned Madripoor again. Maybe Ezekiel Stane will wind up going there after this.
Shit,
Part of
probably.
the idea here, though, is that Ezekiel Stane is basically turning himself
That's the only
into
place he'll
an
be
armor suit. Like
safe,
he's not
probably.
wearing a suit, he is the suit. Then the Hood ends this episode by telling
Well,
the rest
from
of the
the
group
law.
to kill Riri Williams, setting up the whole White Castle battle in episode 5. The episode 5 title was Karma's a Glitch, which is meant to be a reference to Karma coming back around to bite her in the ass when the team comes to kill her. Also a reference to Riri Williams and Natalie, where she calls Natalie her glitch, like you're a glitch, but you're my glitch. This episode starts with the Natalie AI on her own listening to a recording of her and Riri when she was still alive. It's the same recording that they played at the very beginning of episode 1. Part of the idea is this is like a very Vision-like kind of moment. When Vision was first born, he had to figure out what it meant to be human. Like he just kept on trying to figure out himself. That's kind of what's going on with the Natalie AI right now too. Like she's a little bit like Vision. She gets captured by the Hood's crew inadvertently because they're just trying to steal the armor suit. They don't know about the Natalie AI. Riri then goes to White Castle with Zelma Stanton to learn more about Dormammu. This artwork
learning
here
about
of
the
him is
wrong
meant to
one.
be based on concept art from the original Doctor Strange movie. Dormammu the Cosmic Conqueror, as she calls him, is also his name in the comics. The drawing on the other side here too is of the Dark Dimension. There's a little drawing about the toll that magic takes. It's meant to be a reference to Caecilius in the events of the first Doctor Strange movie, where the dark magic they were getting from Dormammu was perverting their bodies. It's the same basic concept that happens to the Hood to Parker Robbins, and then to Riri too when she makes the bargain. Basically slowly turning them into demons. When they talk about Dormammu's grand plan to try and take over the main MCU dimension, that's the same thing that Mephisto is trying to do. They're just using different methods to actually accomplish it. Their creative use of the title in this episode winds up being on the White Castle box of fries. Also kind of made me want a box of fries, so if anybody wants to go buy me one, just let me know.
Yeah.
There's an okay version of a fight scene, like she herself is not an actual hand-to-hand fighter, like her combat skills aren't that great.
She need to
great
step
with
it up,
tech, that's her whole thing.
'cause
Which is why she winds up saving herself
always
using
gonna
the
have it.
watch's force field.
I
Natalie
guess she
then
got
breaks
lucky.
free from the truck with the suit, and they're able to make it in time to Riri to save her with a big old middle finger. Natalie is correct in saying that most of all these problems she's having are of Riri's own making. It's a very classic Spider-Man kind of trope where you create all the problems that you wind up having to solve in your movies.
Did it work?
Literally.
It is true of pretty much all superheroes in general, in all comic book universes like DC Universe, Marvel Universe, everywhere. As they take off, they encounter Zeke Stane, who arrives to get his revenge using all of his Technovore upgrades. He makes a lot of references to the original Iron Man movie to his father Obadiah Stane. He also references the Alanis Morissette that they sang together in the car. He rips her suit to pieces so that he can conveniently take the faceplate back to Parker Robbins, but he does let her live, which is just to show you how they could eventually work together in the future. It's sort of like a Loki and Thor kind of situation where technically they're working at odds with each other, but they're still friendly to each other, like they still care about each other. A little bit more
in a way.
complicated than just having a straight up villain. Clown
Really?
then spots everything and uses this as a way to find out what really happened to Rampage. Riri, then talking to her mother, reveals why she's done everything she's ever done to become Ironheart. It's all because of her father Gary and Natalie's death, not being able to do anything to save them, feeling powerless, in trying to change that. Every step along the way, trying to create a way to feel safe
crazy.
again. That was basically why she was trying to create that
She's
Griot
having
AI, the
them
Wakandan
flashbacks.
AI that she was talking about at MIT. They set up shop in Gary's old garage now, saying that she wishes Natalie was still here, also more foreshadowing for the bargain that she makes with Mephisto later. Her wrench here that says property of Ironhead also feels like Gary's love of Iron Man manifesting back when he was still alive. They give us another flashback video of her as a child. When she mentions Mae Jemison, she was the first African-American female astronaut to go into space in real life. Then they reveal she's going to build her Ironheart Mark IV suit, the magic-powered suit, using pieces from her father
Bruh, that was
Gary's
sad
Plymouth Cuda.
that they
Xavier's old
had to
Natalie
use that
headphones give out,
masterpiece,
forcing
bruh.
him to use the new ones Riri got for him, finding the Star Trek-themed note from her. Notice that he's sitting in front of the Magician album by Errol Garner. I just feels like that's because of what's happening in this episode with Zelma Stanton's magic. The little kid who she borrowed the wagon from shows up to help and get a ton more money from her. She calls Zelma
That boy
Stanton to get her
finessing.
magic infinite source of power, like I need something to power this suit. And eventually Xavier returns and quotes the Star Trek II speech that Kirk had when Spock died, sacrificing himself. Of my friend, I can only say this: of all the souls I've encountered on my travels, hers was the most human. But in context, she's talking about the Natalie AI was the most human. It kind of seems like he's also come around on the AI as well, even though by the end of the episode, there is no more Natalie AI. The real Natalie has come back. Probably
That's
gonna blow
wild,
his
bruh.
mind, like, what have you done now? How did she come back? You definitely did something bad. They give
Yeah.
them a standard Iron Man
That was
suit
crazy.
building montage like you saw in all the Iron Man movies. Really cool. A couple of funny moments too with Zelma Stanton working magical spells on the ceiling. And part of the idea here too, them baking magic into the suit is meant to show you what Doctor Doom is going to be like when he shows up in Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars,
Gonna be
combining magic with
fire.
technology to make himself even more powerful. We get the Hood breaking with the rest of the group. He turns on them, and his magical scars grow even more across his face,
He
which
was
is where he goes
crashing
to
out on
Zeke's Stane to take over him
everybody,
and
bro.
force him to help him. And this last job, the house that they bust into, is the original house from the flashbacks in episode 4, revealing that it is the Hood's original house, like it's his father's house that he was kicked out of when he was 12. Answering everybody's questions about why the Hood was trying to rob these specific companies in the first couple of episodes, like why these in particular, what do you want this technology for? It was more about controlling all the different companies inside his father's portfolio. I think eventually he wanted a way to take over his father's company too, but this time he's just forcing him to sign a
Bro, he
contract
just wanted
like
a
everybody else.
handout.
There are a lot of people that pointed out there, you don't need to be a lawyer to know this. There's a concept called duress, and at least in the United States, it's a little bit similar in every country. Everybody has their own version of this. But it's actually illegal to force people to sign contracts. So anything that you sign under duress is null and void. So any of the contracts that the Hood made with these people would be null and void technically. It was just one of the larger
they would
plot
have to
elements that didn't
snitch.
really make that much sense. Like they're like kind of waving their hands at it, like don't poke too many holes in this part. But you get the basic idea is that he was trying to take over his father's empire, take all of his money from him. All because his father was terrible, didn't want to have anything to do with him, didn't even want, like he said, I didn't want you as a son. So this has all just been a very long revenge
That's
game that he's
crazy.
been playing since he was 12 years old. He gets his father to sign, then kicks him out and says, don't go to the cops or I'll kill you, and that's the last you hear of him. So my assumption now is that going forward, even though Parker lost the Hood, he lost his magic, he still has all the wealth that he's already acquired. When Zelma activates all of her spells, infusing the suit, the red spell energy also seems a little bit like chaos magic, like the coloration looks similar to Scarlet Witch's red chaos magic. She talks about the cost of magic, one of the costs being the Natalie AI doesn't work with the magic, so it basically breaks down completely. The episode 6 finale title
Yeah, I
was
choose
The
one or
Past
the other,
is the
bro.
Past, which is a reference to what Riri Williams says to
Yeah,
Mephisto
leave it in the
when she sells her
past.
soul to him in order to get Natalie back. She thinks that she's just asking for her AI back, but actually Mephisto brings the real Natalie back to life. We start the episode with the Hood having another flashback to the night he first tried robbing his father. He shows how he got the Hood in the first place, how he met Mephisto as well. Basically shows up to save Parker from the security guards wearing the Hood, so they do confirm that in the context of the MCU, the Hood belonged to him. He mentions the door, which is basically just a portal to another part of Chicago, Desperitos Pizza, where his lair is now in present day. Tells him he'll make him the greatest human of his generation because he's been doing this since the dawn of humanity, essentially, getting them to sell their souls to him. Also claims he can control the
I
entire city the way he
mean,
does it with the family in
why
the
didn't
booth,
he just do
but
that?
he
Like,
has
what's the
some
whole point of it?
limitations based on what he's doing inside this dimension. Like, he's more powerful in his original hell dimension. Also, the idea that if he does something too overt, too big, then Doctor Strange, Wong,
That
the
too.
other good sorcerers, the other powerful beings will try to stop him. While this is happening, notice the red light shining on him from the background. This is before he's revealed his name is Mephisto. Like, they say that for the end of the episode, but we all know the truth. We know what's
Yeah.
going on here.
At this
He mentions
point,
the something that Parker won't even miss, which is his soul. When he says soon he'll look like the king that he was born to be, he's actually talking about how the magic will pervert his body and he'll start to look more like an actual demon. Like, eventually this Hood will
that was
possess you
crazy.
completely and you will become a demon fully under my control. Their creative
Crazy
use of the
scene. He
title
looked like
this
a
time is
demon
the
for
food
real,
spread
bro.
on the table, and weirdly he makes Zeke Stain eat a bunch of food. We go back to Riri, and she mentions magic bringing Natalie back. That's just meant to foreshadow the end of the episode when Mephisto literally does that. Parker then calls a meeting with him in his special room where he seems like he's been keeping his hood this whole time, notes his new British accent like you sound different this time. When he references he's been busy with other clients that have kept him all over the place, he makes deals like this with people constantly all over the universe. Like I said, not everybody accepts his deals, which is why he has not taken over the main MCU dimension yet. There are a couple other funny moments during their talk here
So
too.
I'm
Mephisto
guessing it
mentions
makes it
Shakespeare was a
strong, makes him
twat, implying that
stronger
he sold his soul to him, and that's why
when they
he
sell
became a
his
famous writer.
soul
Also, the references
to
that he
him.
makes to Riri later, like the Beatles. When he mentions replacing him with someone more appreciative, he's talking about Riri Williams signing over her soul, which she does later in the episode.
Why don't I just replace you with someone more appreciative?
She winds up helping Zeke break Parker's control, and when he says they're not done, like I mentioned, that just means that he will return in some future project and they'll be frenemies. When they say using her powers to stop speeding trains, that feels like a Tobey Maguire Spider-Man 2 reference. Saving a city from an asteroid also feels like an Avengers Age of Ultron reference when he tried to drop a giant piece of the country, creating a massive extinction-level impact. We're actually going to get James Spader back as a version of Ultron during the new Vision series next year. I don't know if Riri Williams or any of these characters
ain't
are going
know
to guest
that.
star on that. My
That's gonna
assumption
be
is
lit.
no, but there's always a possibility. We get to see some of her new magical suit's abilities. One of them is blocking the Hood's ability to go invisible, like a spell to counteract the
That's
way
the
the
only
magic
way
of the Hood
she
works.
could have
He
got it
starts to
done.
actually full-on become a demon, and she makes it seem like she sacrifices the armor in a last-ditch explosion, but tricks him with the hologram and is able
Yeah,
to
that
take
was
the Hood
crazy. I
from
ain't gonna
him.
lie.
This leaves him without any magic,
I thought
setting
she
up the
was cooked
post-credit
too.
scene where they imply that he's going to trick Zelma Stanton into teaming up with him so that he can acquire more magical power eventually. She leaves, then finds Mephisto on the way out sitting at the same booth in the same spot where he made the original bargain with Parker. And the mutual acquaintances that they both know that he mentions are Parker and possibly some other Marvel characters out there. Like, they imply that Mephisto's already made some deals with characters that we know, but were not on this series. You can let me know
Ghost
who you
Rider.
think that winds up being. I do not think that's meant to be a Spider-Man Brand New Day reference
But
or
if
anything
it's
like that, though.
Spider-Man, that would be
There's a bunch
wild.
of references here. He makes a Transformers reference. I think the t-shirt
It
that
would
he's
make
wearing depicts a
sense
demon. It's another
in
like
a way.
Mephisto Sly reference. There's just like a lot of references to who he actually is until he says it later. claims he's been watching her for a while, also because he looks for the easy marks, the people who are more willing to sell their souls to him. There's a brief moment where he's stirring his drink here.
surprised
You
they
can actually
showed him
see
like
his
that.
actual reflection, his actual depiction
That's
looks
pretty
more
crazy.
comic book-like in the reflection on his spoon. When he mentions her building something iconic, it just sounds like he might try to use her to build a device that will help him take over the MCU dimension in a more efficient way. Makes a couple of jokes about Dormammu, calling him small potatoes compared to his power, and that is relatively true. He is meant to be more powerful than Dormammu. And because
I
of
didn't know
funny
that.
wordplay, the way that Mephisto just works in general, selling your soul to the devil, she asks to bring Natalie back, but doesn't specify that it's the AI, and he talks about death being difficult, but not impossible. She makes the
That's
deal,
crazy.
sells
She
her
sold her
then
soul,
goes
bro.
home, all seems well, like she's not really thinking
Jeez.
about it that much, and tries to refine a better Mark V Ironheart suit. Like, this is meant to be her next suit that she's mapping out here on the whiteboard. As we see Natalie come back, but if it wasn't clear, like I said, this is the real, original Natalie before she died, just brought back in adult form. That's why
That's
she's
wild.
confused about all the AI talk. Like, why are you making Star Trek references?
Death is difficult.
You have to remember, Mephisto said death is difficult, but not impossible. That's just because death is just the beginning in the MCU. When you die, based on what they say during Moon Knight, your consciousness just transfers to an alternate plane of existence, an alternate dimension. So essentially, that's what Mephisto has done. Like, he's just plucked Natalie from another dimension and put her back in the MCU dimension, the same way that Moon Knight came back to life by just coming back to the MCU dimension. As she hugs Natalie, a fresh magical scar across her arm appears, just like on the hood, slowly turning Riri Williams into a demon, implying that it's just going to get worse as we see her come back in future Marvel productions. Not totally sure if she's going to be in Avengers Doomsday or Avengers Secret Wars. She'll probably show up in at least one of those projects in some way. One of the other big things, though, is the Young Avengers team, which is now mostly called the Champions, because by the time they actually do it, none
Is
of them will be
Star-Lord
young
supposed to
anymore. Like,
be
they'll be in their 30s by the
part of
time it
it, right?
happens. That's not supposed to happen till after Avengers Secret Wars, so the Young Avengers characters will probably come back in the next couple of Avengers movies, but they won't actually be like a real team and dig into that story of what they do as a team until after Secret Wars. Then we get that post-credit scene with the Hood, Parker Robbins, showing up to try and trick Zelma Stanton into forming a new crew with him with the goal of getting more magical power for himself, probably to eventually get revenge against Riri Williams, but
More than
mostly just
likely.
because he wants more power in general. When he says Supreme-like help, he's talking about Sorcerer Supreme, who is currently Wong. Like I said, I think this was meant to be a play, like a setup for the Strange Academy TV show they were going to do, but has since been canceled. When he mentions party tricks, that's also a reference back to Avengers Infinity War and Spider-Man No Way Home, to what Iron Man was doing, making fun of Doctor Strange, and then Dr. Octopus making the same joke, basically. But there were a bunch of Easter eggs and references, so if you spotted any that I didn't talk about during this video or my previous video, just write them below in the comments. Overall, I just felt like the back...
That was it. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe.